EQ is about how we show up. And when we show up behaving a certain way, we think, and we may have received a lot of kudos for showing up in, one system we used to be part of, and people telling us how successful we are. They keep patting us on the back. That a boy, that a gal, keep doing what you're doing. That's how we become successful around here. And we tend to, thrive in that environment. And we do more of it. And maybe that becomes a defining behavior of who we are and what we're about. But then we go somewhere else and we eat a little bit of that humble pie where someone says, whoa, a bit too much. I think one of the powerful pieces of EQ is higher scores don't always mean more EQ. We can get into a bind when sometimes we do too much of any good thing and it becomes a liability. It gets in our way. So many times I have, be a leader, go out there and make an impression and make your mark, especially in the military with short tenure of their tours and so forth. Come here and make an impression. But what do they mean by make an impression? Shake it and make your print on it, put your fingerprints on it and make it into something that wasn't before. And in doing so, sometimes we walk in like a bull in china shop.
Welcome to the EQ for Entrepreneurs podcast. Like most business owners, you already know you need good business and marketing strategies to scale and be profitable. But at some point, you've hit the dreaded wall where you feel stuck and frustrated. EQ for Entrepreneurs is for business owners and leaders who are honest enough to admit that they just might be the ones holding their business back and are brave enough to change that.
We're Noble and Kathy, and every week we're having candid conversations about all things emotional intelligence and how growing that has allowed us to get out of our own way and is radically transforming both our businesses and our personal lives. This is the secret sauce strategy for modern entrepreneurs who are tired of hustling without seeing results and want to grow a business and a life that they love.
Well, Hassan, thank you so much. I know we don't have a lot of time here. I want to just, first of all, thank you for, your wisdom and coaching me and training me up on emotional intelligence. And, it's been such an amazing journey along already for me, a 3-year journey, 3 or 4 year journey now. And just, again, getting your mindset and your wisdom and your insights and your experience has been tremendously valuable and impactful. And I just really want to thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate that. You're quite the boost to my self-regard there.
That's great. And I'm working on my emotional expression. So
that's wonderful.
So Hassan, you have been in this EQ space now as a consultant, as a coach and a trainer now for 15 or 20 years now, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Well, I've been in it since, I guess we onboarded the whole EQ in 2007. So yeah, I've been working with it since 2007.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. And and what I know, again, personally about your background, you've worked with military, you've worked with the private sector. From your vast experience in this space, what have you seen as the impact of emotional intelligence in the military and in the private sector?
I think in both sectors, something that is a common thread is the impact has been tremendous and noticeable, first of all. But what makes it that impactful is the fact that emotional intelligence, at least from the model that we teach and the practices we teach, it is something that is changeable. So one is that we have control over whatever behaviors we deploy into the world around us. And knowing that, being empowered to know that, one, you have control over what behaviors you choose to use. And if you're using certain behaviors and they are making the desired, they're bringing about the desired result, having the desired impact, landing in a way that you intend for it to land, then by all means, keep doing exactly what you're doing. You're successful and effective at doing what you do. But if it's something that isn't working for you, then it's within your purview to say, okay, that's not working for me. Can I think about what behaviors I want to use in order to be more effective? And then you have control over that process. Mind you, it's easier said than done, but the bottom line is, Noble, it's within your purview to go do that. I can coach you on it, but it's up to you to do that. And once you do it, you're going to see that change. And have I seen changes in people's lives? Absolutely. Some faster than others, clearly, but it's something that people can reap the benefits of and see the changes, the desired changes, I guess. And once you're even somewhat successful, that pays dividends and that encourages you to even do more and more. And that's what makes it so impactful.
That's awesome. And the other, for me and for those that I've been working with, the power or one of the neat, exciting aspects of emotional intelligence is it's not just for your day job. It's not just it doesn't growing your emotional intelligence does not just impact your job performance. It impacts your home life and your family and your spouse and your children. And have you seen the same thing?
Absolutely. I think you hit it on the head there, Noble, because it is something that, and more often than not, I see people maybe not seeing the connection in the workplace as much. Well, we're here to do work. We here have a mission to accomplish, et cetera, et cetera. But then they're more amenable to trying it at home and seeing the response, the positive response they get from trying something new, because I really think inherently people are good. And if they feel that you're trying hard to do something, they're willing to demonstrate grace and patience with you. So if you're being transparent about that, hey, I'm trying something new. This is just experimenting here. And I'm trying something new. Would you be willing to give me feedback on it? Am I doing better? Am I doing worse? Is it the same? What's going on? And when they try to do that at home and they see the dividends being paid, then they're willing to come back and try it at work. But when they get some level of success in home life, then I think it's easier for them to say, you know what, I demonstrated some vulnerability and I tried something new, stretch out of my comfort zone, it paid dividends, let me try it at work. And then you see almost a logarithmic graph of, hey, I tried this one thing. Now let me try 2 new behaviors. Let me try 3 more behaviors or 4 more behaviors. And you could see people really catching up. So that's the beauty of it. Another thing about EQ is it gets to, at least the way we apply it here at OKA, is less is more. We don't want you working on all 15 of the subscales of EQ. Less is more. Focus your attention on one area, maybe 2 areas, max 3 areas that you really want to make the most change to. And experiment with that. And then after a few months of seeing that it's working and it's working well, it's working to your advantage, then try to incorporate something else or add something else. And while this is going to sound like an oxymoron, you never reach a pinnacle and say, okay, I'm emotionally intelligent now, I have no work to do. There's always more to be done. But the nice thing is you focus your attention on 1 or 2 areas, maximum 3. And you also want to make sure that you leverage what you're doing so well, because there are many times that you think there's nothing I can do well, but that's the time that you most need to anchor your confidence in yourself in what you're successful at. There's got to be 1 or 2 areas that you're really successful at. Leverage those. And the areas you want to change, well, make the changes, the desired changes, and let's talk about it. Did it work for you? Did it not? And in what ways? And then it gets down to very tactical things you do. From what you say, how you show up. A lot of it is also our nonverbals. So we tend to do things because we think that's who we are. But who we are is a lot more than what we do. What we do is a small slice of it. And I can certainly focus on how I do things. And if I'm doing them well, keep doing them. If I'm doing them and they're not having the desired results, then I need to change my way. And then let's see, does it work for me or not?
That's excellent. Those are some great insights, Hassan. Something that has been fascinating. So I've so, since you trained me in this model, the EQI model, I've been able to administer, I think maybe, I want to say close to 20 tests now.
Nice.
And
Okay.
it has just been so fascinating. As
Mm-hmm.
someone who I've always been passionate about people, I love learning about people. I've studied, personality and strengths and stuff for, 2 decades now. And to bring in this model and have a scientific assessment,
Yeah.
be able to give a map of where somebody is at today. And it's a slice of time. And like you said, man, and I'm so thankful for this, that it is a skill that we can learn, that we can improve and to balance ourselves out and become, I don't know if this is maybe accurate, but healthier, in how we're approaching life and situations and work and business and that kind of thing. It has been so powerful. The assessments, but I'm being specific, specifically here, the power of being able to give somebody a scientific assessment of where they are at emotionally
Mm-hmm.
today. It's been so personally, it's been powerful for me, for my own test, but then also for these other people. Like I've got a corporate client right now. They're all high achievers. They're all senior executives.
Mm-hmm.
And the ironic thing, many of them, I'll say most of them were very low in a number of areas.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're like, well, man, we're not used to getting humble pie. We're not used to, if you had told, like, it was funny before, in the conversation leading up to me giving them their results, they were all saying, oh, Hassan, you need to work on this. And Bob, you need to work on this. And Noble, you need to work on this. So they're telling each other what they all needed to work on, right?
Yeah.
But they're like, oh man, I got this pretty good, right? And then I give the reports, right? And it was as silent as a library in there. They were just
Yeah.
they couldn't believe just how and a couple of them were like, oh my goodness, and I'm like, guys, look, hey, this is, I said a lot of things that you shared to us. It's a snapshot in time, and all of you have, there are some strong areas that you guys have. So, let's, during our one-on-one sessions, let's figure out how we can incorporate your strengths to help pull up some of these other areas that maybe not as engaged as some of the other areas. But it's so powerful. So let me ask you, after, so I've only been using this resource now for a couple months. For you that's been using it for, a decade and a half, what have you seen to be the power and impact of these EQ assessments?
I think one of the biggest pieces that I find really powerful, to me, it was a big aha moment, is EQ is about how we show up. And when we show up behaving a certain way, we think, and we may have received a lot of kudos for showing up in, one system we used to be part of, and people telling us how successful we are. They keep patting us on the back. That a boy, that a gal, keep doing what you're doing. That's how we become successful around here. And we tend to, thrive in that environment. And we do more of it. And maybe that becomes a defining behavior of who we are and what we're about. But then we go somewhere else and we eat a little bit of that humble pie where someone says, whoa, a bit too much. I think one of the powerful pieces of EQ is higher scores don't always mean more EQ. We can get into a bind when sometimes we do too much of any good thing and it becomes a liability. It gets in our way. So many times I have, be a leader, go out there and make an impression and make your mark, especially in the military with short tenure of their tours and so forth. Come here and make an impression. But what do they mean by make an impression? Shake it and make your print on it, put your fingerprints on it and make it into something that wasn't before. And in doing so, sometimes we walk in like a bull in china shop. By the way, do you know that actually bulls are very careful when they walk into areas that there's a lot of stuff in it. So as far as like it, go with it though. So like a bull in a china shop, and sometimes we make that desire change without knowing what was good about the system before I walked in here, what was working, because clearly there's something that they were doing successful. So sometimes we get into places and we do too much. That can show up as too assertive, too confident, you know, too such a high achiever. And I make everybody around me feel like if they're sitting, even resting or relaxing for 5 seconds, oh, that's idle time. You're not producing, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. Always walk like you're on fire and there's something to be done and all of that. Well, with EQ, there is such a concept that we could be seen as doing too much of a good thing. And now it's becoming toxic or really disempowering to others or getting in the way of others. I'm not saying be less successful. That's not what I'm saying. But if I am too assertive, well, I can show up like a bully. I can show up like it's my way or the highway. I'm too commanding of the spotlight and all of that. And that may be getting in the way of my successful and effectiveness with my team. My team begins to, just feel disenfranchised. I don't consider their opinions, sometimes even their ideas that may be better than mine and so forth. It's my way or the highway all the time. So that can get in the way. Even something such as empathy. Some people say, well, Hassan, can you have too much empathy? What does that look and sound like? Absolutely, we can have too much empathy. I listen to people and I take on their, whatever emotional states they have to the point that I'm sympathizing with them. I take it on and I feel their pain. And now I'm just in the same place that they are. How can I be of any help if I can't remain objective and distant from what's going on for them? I need to separate my own emotional states from theirs. That's their issue, their problem, their situation that they need to work on with my support and my help, but I don't need to take it on and own it with them. So I think the power and the beauty of EQ is there is such a concept as, one, high scores don't always mean you're more intelligent than someone else. It's the proper use of each tool in the right context. And then just any of the elements or aspects of our emotional intelligence, if overdone, can be equally as detrimental as when I lack it. Sorry, that's a long answer to your question. But I think that's one of the bigger pieces and most powerful pieces of that model.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's excellent. That's excellent. And then another insight that you gave me during our training was that, you may be in a particular role. Like one of the analogies that I've used a number of times is if you're a CPA crunching numbers 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, you may not demonstrate a lot of empathy if you're interacting with numbers all day. Mm-hmm. that may not mean that you don't have it. It may mean that you just are not using it a lot, in your particular role. So that could also be, so just the interpretation of the scores, I think is very important, so that you don't put all your eggs into, I'm only showing up as a 53 in an area, or I'm 140 in an area, and oh my goodness, look how great I am. Well, sure. Because this is something during our conversation when you were coaching me, is that I have higher optimism, and I thought, well, it's just because I'm a positive guy. Well, I didn't realize it, but I was actually using, for most of my, again, 98% of my life, I've used optimism as a coping mechanism. Mm-hmm. Because I have low self-awareness, and my reality testing was low because I didn't know how to handle, I didn't want to look at reality objectively because I wasn't emotionally aware enough to handle the emotions that I would get from looking at reality objectively. So my coping mechanism was optimism, right? So I never would have understood that relationship between those subscales without that assessment, or realizing that I'm demonstrating higher in a subscale for unhealthy reasons.
Absolutely. And that's very insightful of you to realize that, number one. the important thing is doing something about it. And from the day you had that aha moment, and I could see it in your face and everything, it's, so what do I do about it? And that's the taking action piece. That's the beauty of EQ, is insight is one thing, but to convert that insight into action that then results in better well-being or healthier life or whatever the case may be, that's the big translation from insight to action. But to your point, and I face that with many in the field that we work in, organization and leadership development, where optimism is really on extra high, but then their reality testing may be lower. Maybe they're, approaching everything from looking on the brighter side of life. And sometimes a dose of reality testing that is equivalent to my amount of optimism I bring to any one situation might be a healthier approach. But likewise, Noble, I've worked with many medics and special forces individuals who were high in empathy. And high in empathy in the civilian sector or civilian world, that's great. I mean, it means you pay attention to what people are saying, you actively listen, you potentially can even detect the emotional states that they're having. You might even go as far as you're so compassionate you want to do something to help them out whenever that's possible. Well, that's wonderful. But when you're a medic on the scene and you see someone in pain, you have to keep that empathy in check, because you cannot be in the same place where they're at. In order for you to be effective as a medic, you have to kind of turn it down a bit. In the moment, you have a job to do, and the job requires a lot of attention to the details of what's going on, assessing the patient situation and all of that. So maybe high empathy isn't necessarily healthy for someone in that field. Maybe, high average, on the higher side of average, might be healthier. Again, I'm just using an example without the specifics of it, but that is, or a specific number attached to it. But that generally is an awareness that I think the EQ gives us. Other tools, I'm not so sure they go into that nuance piece. And that's what you were referring to earlier by a snapshot in time. Because let's say I now leave that field, I retire from being a medic, and now I have my grandchildren, and I want to really pay attention to what's going on in their life, and maybe even relate to them. And relate to them when I was their age, what was going on in my life, so I can better understand their situation now as teenagers and so forth. So now, well, I might need to work on my empathy, being a little bit more active in my life than when I was a medic. So knowing that situational awareness, that's part of emotional intelligence. It's not about having high scores or high engagement with all 15 of the subscales or areas of our emotional intelligence, but it's knowing what tool to use with what situation. If I may use the analogy of a tool belt, which I use often, and you have 15 subscales at your disposal, 15 tools at your disposal. Walking into any one situation, you know which tools to use. And maybe those 2 tools are perfect for this situation. Another situation in my life, I may need 3 other tools to best handle that situation. When I have that versatility, then my overall well-being, my overall psychological and mental health is benefiting from that, because I have that versatility and diversity in my use. I'm not a one-trick pony. But when I'm a one-trick pony, I walk into every situation with lots of confidence, no empathy, no reality testing, none of those. Well, how far can that self-confidence get you? So it's knowing what to use and when to use it is what it's about. That's another power of that tool.
Yes, absolutely. That's excellent, Hassan. So last question here, Hassan.
Yeah.
What would you recommend for somebody wanting to begin their emotional intelligence journey? What advice would you give someone like that?
That's a tough one, because it different solutions for different people. If you have the ability to, of course, take the assessment and potentially even take it from a 360 perspective if other people are willing to give you that feedback, and then have coaching, well, that's the high end. But listening to some of these aspects of our emotional intelligence, I don't need a tool to measure it or gauge it in myself. If you have some iota of self-awareness, you might be able to say, oh yeah, those maybe 1, 2, 3 areas I really am good at. In fact, I've received feedback from work, from my family about how well I do those things. Well, keep doing those. But when you run into situations and repeatedly you either get feedback or you give yourself feedback at the end of whatever happened, and you go, oh, I didn't handle that situation well. Well, ask yourself the question of why have you not handled that situation well? If you don't have the answer to that, then ask someone in your life who knows you well enough and doesn't mind you giving you the unadulterated truth as they see it. Hey, what am I missing here? What am I not doing? And then does it tie to aspects or building blocks of this model? Then find a way to build it. And again, finding a way on your own it may be difficult, but someone like you, someone like myself, someone who's familiar and their area of expertise is emotional and social intelligence will be happy to guide you into what areas can you work on to be a better person, to show up as the best father, as the best medic, as the best firefighter, as the best CEO, whatever your role in life is.
Excellent, Hassan. That's great. And I totally, again, appreciate you. Thank you again for your wisdom and all that you have sown and invested into me. There are a lot of people who are being impacted by, what you've passed on to me. And again, I really, really appreciate it. And thank you for your time today, Hassan. I really, really appreciate it. Hopefully we'll get to do some more interviews in the future as well.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Always happy to work with you. Always happy to work with you, Noah.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
You're welcome. You as well. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.